The Parents. When Miss Honey emerged from the headmistress' study, most of the children were outside in the playground. Her first move was to go around to the various teachers who taught the senior class and borrow from them a number of textbooks, books on algebra, geometry, French, English literature, and the like. Then she sought out Matilda and called her into the classroom. "There is no point," she said, "in you sitting in class doing nothing while I am teaching the rest of the form the 2 times table and how to spell cat and rat and mouse. So during each lesson, I shall give you one of these textbooks to study. At the end of the lesson, you can come up to me with your questions if you have any, and I shall try to help you. How does that sound?" "Thank you, Miss Honey," Matilda said. "That sounds fine." "I am sure," Miss Honey said, "that we'll be able to get you moved into a much higher form later on. But for the moment, the headmistress wishes you to stay where you are." "Very well, Miss Honey," Matilda said. "Thank you so much for getting those books for me." "What a nice child she is," Miss Honey thought. "I don't care what her father said about her. She seems very quiet and gentle to me, and not a bit stuck up in spite of her brilliance. In fact, she hardly seems aware of it." So, when the class reassembled, Matilda went to her desk and began to study a textbook on geometry which Miss Honey had given her. The teacher kept half an eye on her all the time and noticed that the child very soon became deeply absorbed in the book. She never glanced up once during the entire lesson. And suddenly, she decided that she would go and call on Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood that very evening. She would go fairly late, between 9 and 10 o'clock, when Matilda was sure to be in bed. And that is precisely what she did. Having got the address from the school records, Miss Honey set out to walk from her own home to the Wormwoods' house shortly after 9. "This child has already read an astonishing number of books," Miss Honey said. "I was simply trying to find out if she came from a family that loved good literature." "We don't hold with book reading," Mr. Wormwood said. "You can't make a living from sitting on your fanny and reading storybooks. We don't keep them in the house." "I see," Miss Honey said. "Well, all I came to tell you was that Matilda has a brilliant mind, but I expect you knew that already." "Of course I knew she could read," the mother said. "She spends her life up in her room buried in some silly book." "But does it not intrigue you," Miss Honey said, "that a little 5-year-old child is reading long adult novels by Dickens and Hemingway? Doesn't that make you jump up and down with excitement?" "Not particularly," the mother said. "I'm not in favor of blue-stocking girls. A girl should think about making herself look attractive so she can get a good husband later on. Looks is more important than books, Miss Hunky." The name is Honey," Miss Honey said. "Now look at me," Mrs. Wormwood said. "Then look at you. You chose books, I chose looks." Miss Honey looked at the plain, plump person with the smug suet pudding face who was sitting across the room. "What did you say?" she asked. "I said you chose books and I chose looks," Mrs. Wormwood said. "And who's finished up the better off? Me, of course. I'm sitting pretty in a nice house with a successful businessman, and you are left slaving away, teaching a lot of nasty little children the ABC. Quite right, Sugar Plum, Mr. Wormwood said, casting a look of such simpering sloppiness at his wife it would have made a cat sick. Miss Honey decided that if she was going to get anywhere with these people, she must not lose her temper. "I haven't told you all of it yet," she said. "Matilda, so far as I can gather at this early stage, is also a kind of mathematical genius. She can multiply complicated figures in her head like lightning." "What's the point of that when you can buy a calculator?" Mr. Wormwood said. "A girl doesn't get a man by being brainy," Mrs. Wormwood said.